Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Property Investing Academy. My name is Sean Magner, and I run the Property Investing Academy, which is a private coaching, mentorship, mastermind program that I started last year. I also run Monument City Capital, which is a hard money lending business based here in Baltimore, Maryland. Hard money, for those that don't know, can kind of best be described as private lending for the acquisition and/or renovation of investment real estate for real estate investors. I own a single-family rental property portfolio in and around Maryland and Pennsylvania. And so what I'm coming today to talk about is rental properties, rental property investing. And if you saw the post that the announcement post, if you will, that I left out or put out there this morning, we're talking about rental properties and specifically my own strategy of why and how I got started. Because I think it's a pretty important topic. It's a topic that comes up a lot in conversations that I have with others in the industry, other colleagues and friends and students and borrowers. And so I am going to, I hope I can actually see the comments here. There we go. Anyway, if you can see this and hear me, if you would just drop a comment below, maybe I can see it that way. But going live is relatively new to me. So anyway, guys, why this topic specifically? Well, it's the goal for most entrepreneurs. And I'm also going to be looking over to the left a few minutes, maybe the right, depending on which orientation you are. But I'm going to be looking over here at some of my notes because there's some bulleted points that I want to make sure I touch on. And so again, why this topic specifically? Again, I think it's the goal for most entrepreneurs, leaving the rat race, leaving the 9 to 5 and pursuing the 5 to 9 full time, making that a full-time thing. It might not be for everybody. Not everybody wants to quit their job, but a lot of us did and do. And it was for me, right? I always wanted to fire my job and work for myself. And if you saw earlier in the week, down below, if you scroll, you'll see a post I'm kind of wanting to expand on that post that talked to kind of the different strategies of why people buy rental properties, how people buy rental properties, just kind of touched on it. But I want to expand a little bit here and more or less kind of explain how I did it and how others do it as well. Maybe a little different than what I do. But and so I'm going to look over and I'm going to kind of walk through a couple of bullets here. So if I back up a little ways, I'm 41 years old. At 22 years old, I bought my first house, right? I left the construction field. Actually, I left the construction job and I got a sales job. And I was introduced to somebody who introduced me to a book that a lot of you have seen before, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. And that book produced a bit of a paradigm shift for me. It changed how I saw business, how I saw financial literacy or finances, how I looked at the world around me, just totally differently. So at 22 years old, I was introduced to that book and I started learning some of these strategies and kind of began a financial literacy journey, if you will. Now, at age 23 in 2006, I was able to finally save up enough money and buy my first house. And the only way that I was able to buy that thing was by doing what I later learned to be called house hacking. I'd never heard of house hacking, but house hacking is essentially, there's lots of ways to do it, but somebody else helps you pay the mortgage, right? In my case, I had a couple buddies promise to rent rooms from me. And that was the only way that I was able to afford buying that place. And I felt confident and comfortable carrying that mortgage and carrying that debt. And so 23, I bought that first one. Not until 8 years later did I buy my second property. And when I moved to Baltimore, I bought a 2-unit property, and it was another house hack. Again, I lived in a downstairs unit, and the young lady above me was paying about 78% of my mortgage. Another example of house hacking. That's a strategy a lot of folks embrace and adopt when getting started, because you can get really good debt that way, right? I'm not going to go into all the debt service options, but you can get really, really good homeowner occupant debt and have somebody else help you pay the mortgage. So pretty helpful. So I was able to do that a couple of times, but then not until 2015, about a year and a half later, did I actually start my first real estate investing business. And I was under the assumption that I would likely, as I started learning, that I was going to have to flip a whole bunch of houses, save a whole bunch of money, and eventually be able to have some money for down payments on investment properties. That was going to be a slow burn, all right? And I'd heard of one or two people that I had met at the time owned over 100 properties, and I just didn't know how the heck they did it. And so I thought I was going to have to it was going to take me forever to do that. And so not shortly after that, I joined a coaching program and I met a mentor. And this person introduced me to the BRRRR strategy. A lot of you watching are probably familiar. For those of you who are not, BRRRR is just an acronym for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. So you buy a property, usually a distressed property. You force appreciation by making improvements. So you renovate it, rent it out, and now you get a new loan based on the new improved value, and pay yourself some of the costs that you might have put into it back, and rinse and repeat. It's kind of a strategy that a lot of folks use. I had never heard of that. I'd never heard of BRRRR. I had never heard of a lot of things at the time. I was very, very new. And so this coaching program and this mentor kind of taught me and helped me connect those dots. And so what did I do with that? Well, I decided to kind of go all in. And my goal was always to fire my job and work for myself, as many of yours probably is as well. And so what did I do? I had some 401ks at some previous employers. I had some mutual funds and IRAs. I liquidated it all. I went all in. I cashed out and I went all in on myself. I can connect the dots for those that are curious how and what my exact strategies were and exactly what I did. If you'd like, I will at the end of this, by the way, guys. I'll drop my Calendly link below so you can connect with me if you want to kind of go a little bit deeper, and so I can elaborate more on anything that I'm talking about here today. I don't want to move too fast through it today, but I also don't want to get too far into the weeds. So if you do want to connect, then I can, after the call, I can certainly help you out. But when I cashed out all those retirement accounts, there was about $115,000 that I had put together. And you know, buying real estate's not cheap, right? I live in Baltimore, and the properties I was buying, I'll get into that in a minute, were affordable, no doubt. But $115,000 when you're buying houses doesn't go very, very far. And so I needed to take on some leverage, and I'll get into that here in a second. But, you know, when I learned about that BRRRR strategy and I cashed out all those retirement accounts, I started shopping pretty seriously for real estate. And my mentor helped me to find and underwrite deals. Underwriting just meaning just running the numbers, right? To make sure that these were good investments. And we did a lot of that. He later introduced me to a hard money lender, guy who had just sold his business and came into some money and wanted to lend it out. And so he and I got on we got together, we had a meeting, and he said, look, I just want you to have about $15,000 or so in each deal. I thought, whoa, wait a second. So if I have $15,000, I can buy a bunch of these houses really pretty quickly here. And when I refinance them to do that BRRRR process, I'll get some of that money back and I can go do it all over again. I was off to the races. And so it took me, 8 years to buy 2 properties and then 14 months to buy my next 18 properties. A lot of you have a very similar story. Some of you may think that's insane, and that's a lot of houses. And it was a lot of houses. 2015, I wasn't hearing at the time of these folks that are doing 100 deals like you hear today, buying 100 houses in a year. Crazy stuff. But how I underwrote those deals was I needed cash flow. Now, I'm not going to stand up on a high horse and just say, if you don't buy for cash flow, you're an idiot, because there's a lot of reasons to buy real estate other than just cash flow. But for what I needed it for, why I was buying this real estate, was that I wanted to quit my job. So in order to quit my job, I needed to replace my income. And so cash flow is simply defined, guys, as rent minus the debt service, your mortgage, and any expenses. Whatever's left is the cash flow. And so that you can spend. You can't really spend depreciation, but I'll get into this in a sec. What's up, Pete? Dom, Manny, what's up, guys? You can't spend depreciation. You can't spend equity, right? You can't buy a bag of chips with it, but you can with cash flow. And so when I set out, I started buying rental properties, Section 8 specifically, and I can get into why that is, but I started buying rental properties that would produce cash flow. And my minimum I wanted was about $300 per month per door. And I thought, how did I get to that number? I said, well, if these people are going to be a total pain in my butt, and these houses are going to require my time, I want to make it worth it. So if I had 10 of those headaches, I want to at least clear $3,000 a month. That was a good number for me. All right, cool. So $300 per door per month was my cash flow goal. Okay, got it. So then I started doing a little more math. Well, that's my average cash flow per door. I knew that number. That's an important number. Now, how many of those do I need to pay my current bills? Got it. Then how many more of those do I need to replace my income? Got it. And somewhere in between there, between paying your bills and replacing your income, it's your choice whether you continue the 9 to 5 and pursue the 5 to 9 full time, or you stay with it, right? So that was the simple math. That's how it went, right? That's it. Cash flow, what's your average per month per door? How many of those do you need to pay your bills? How many more of those do you need to replace your income? And now are you confident and ready to do this thing full time? And so that was kind of the formula, right? But again, I kind of come back to my why of why I started buying was to quit my job, to replace my income. Not everybody wants to fire their job though, right? Not everybody does. Some people like their jobs. I've met plenty of operators, investors that operate at a very high level, and they like their jobs. They like what they do. Maybe they run a roofing business, or they are a doctor or a professional of some sort. There's lots of, you can do anything. Some people just like what they do, and they see this as an opportunity to either bring in a little more extra cash, drive down their tax bill, build a nut and a nest egg for their loved ones, whatever. There's lots of reasons why. So I don't stand on a soapbox and say that cash flow is the only reason to buy. In fact, I recently had a conversation with a guy. I was on a podcast last week, and we had this conversation about when, he's exiting his portfolio, something that if you watched a previous live stream, I'm considering doing as well. But to exit your portfolio, if it's a strong cash flower, that means it's probably in neighborhoods that's not likely to appreciate in great value, right? You think of appreciation as, and for those that don't understand, appreciation is the eventual increase in value, whether that's forced by improvements or just, time helps out. So if your properties are strong cash flowers, there's a strong chance, there's at least a slight chance, that they're not likely to appreciate at a great clip. And so when you go to sell those, you might sell them for what they're worth. And I remember when I first started out saying, I don't care if in 30 years I sell these properties for exactly what I bought them for. The cash flow along the way was nice. Yes and no. Because wouldn't it be nice to have bought 5 or 10 houses that over the next 5 or 10 years doubled in price, doubled in value rather, not price, but value. Sure, that'd be nice. They might not have cash flowed along the way. I'll give you a story. So one of my good buddies does, another hard money lender like myself, he does loans, and he has a loan product, a unique one. It's a fully amortized 5-year product. So that means in 5 years, you're gonna own the asset outright. It's not gonna cash flow along the way. And why is that? He charges 16% interest and 6 points. It's an expensive loan. But in 5 years, you own it outright. So there's an argument for the right buyer and the right property that product makes total sense. No doubt about it. And again, if you think about appreciation, if you're in Baltimore, a lot of folks watching might be in Baltimore. I think of certain neighborhoods, and I know a lot of folks watching aren't in Baltimore, so this won't make much sense to you. But the nicer neighborhoods you're likely to have better tenants, or at least easier tenants to manage, a nicer property. You kind of get the pick of the litter. So while they may not cash flow as well, they're likely to increase in value over time, more likely to increase in value over the time, and easier to manage along the way. So there's a trade-off. There's absolutely a trade-off. So if I was a professional with good income and I enjoyed my job, but I wanted to buy some rental properties, I probably wouldn't have done what I did, which was go into rougher parts of a city that have lower price points to get in, because I wanted to buy a whole bunch of these with the limited capital that I had at the time. And I probably wouldn't do that necessarily. It really depends. There's different strokes for different folks, right? So not everybody wants to quit their job. So I would ask you, if you're considering building a rental property portfolio, why? What's the reason? What's your motivator? Is it that you need cash flow, you want to quit your job? Well, that would take you down one call there. If it's that you want to offset some taxes, or you just want to have an investment outside of the conventional, I call real estate an alternative, but this traditional stock market, right? So mutual funds, stocks, bonds, trust. There's an argument for that, to diversify a little bit. But my help, this is kind of where a coach comes in. This is where I kind of circle back to my own coaches and my mentors when I first got started. They helped me to better understand, hey, what are your goals and where are you currently at? And let's connect those dots. I often talk with my students, and I turn the board, if you can see behind you here, there's a big whiteboard, big old whiteboard. I'm nuts about whiteboarding. And I always talk about the top right of the whiteboard being where my goal is and the bottom left being where I currently am. And if you think about what a SMART goal is, specific, measurable, attainable, relative, and time-bound, right? You've probably heard of that before. I just simply deconstruct that goal back to where I am, setting milestones along the way, and then I get to work. It's simple. But so connecting those dots is helpful when you have an experienced person like I did. I was very fortunate. to have joined the right coaching program and have met the right mentor to help me to build the rental property portfolio, to pursue the goal that I had, which was to fire my job and pursue my dream full time, which is to work for myself. You know, I remember when I was young, always, when I was working in the field, always wondering, I worked for a big remodeling contractor, home builder and remodeling contractor, did beautiful work, beautiful homes. And I would always daydream, what in the world does this person do, right? What do they do? And I'll tell you, everybody, they were either a high-paid professional, doctors, lawyers, whatever, or they owned something, a business, real estate, they owned something. And I knew that at a young age. And so, you know, that was a big deal for me. So I wanted to connect those dots. So I'm going to look back at my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything, because this is an important topic, I think. I can elaborate more. Again, if you want to, the key points that I want to take away is cash flow is important to me, may not be important to everybody. If your goal is to quit your job by buying rental properties, you need to be focused on cash flow, no doubt about it. Appreciation's cool, but some would argue it's kind of speculation, right? You're hoping that things are going to change in time. Sure, historically real estate always goes up, but cash flow is guaranteed. I hear those operators that are saying, no, it's not. What about tenants and turnovers? And yeah, I get you. But cash flow, if you have an occupied unit, if you've done your numbers right, and you've bought right, you've invested right, you've managed right, cash flow is there, and you can spend it, and it can allow you to replace your income and replace your paycheck. That was a big deal for me. So anyway, if this is a topic that resonates with you and you want to go deeper, hit me up. I'll drop my Calendly link below. I'm always open to having these conversations. If you're interested in quitting your 9-to-5, but you don't know how to, and you're not sure how to connect those dots, hit me up. If you have an interest, it's not easy, guys. It's not easy at all, and it took some time. In fact, from 2015, I still worked another 5 years before I was able to quit my job full time, and I bounced between a couple of jobs along the way that allowed for both some time and financial freedom, made a little more money, and had a little more liberty with my time in those job roles, and that allowed me to continue growing as I did. And so, anyhow, I'd love to jump on a call with you, strategize. I will drop my Calendly link below. If you have any takeaways, I'd love to hear them. I'm going to try to open up the Q&A. Let me see if I can find the comments. Sorry, guys. I'm always stumbling through this, looking for the comments, and I can never really find them. Well, doesn't look like I'm going to find them here today either. So anyway, well, thank you very much for spending some of your time with me. I do appreciate it, as always. Thank you for being a member of the Property Investing Academy. If you ever want to connect with me, again, Calendly link is below. You can find me, just reach out. And keep an eye out for more live streams. I usually try to go live every Thursday or Friday. Once a week, I try to drop something there. If you have an idea, something you want to talk about, drop me a comment below. I'd love to elaborate. And maybe I'll use it as a topic one day here soon. And anyway, if you would, drop a comment below. Again, I can't see the comments now, so I will look for them when we get off the call here after this is no longer live, and I'll reply to each one after the call here. But I'd love to hear what your takeaway is. If you have any questions, comments, please drop them below. So with that said, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great afternoon, a strong weekend, and if I can help in any way, please don't hesitate. Cheers, everybody.